Good morning. This is Steve Stites, Chief Medical Officer here at the University of Kansas Health System. We're broadcasting live from the Dolph Simons Family Studio. And joining me, of course, is Dr. Hawkeye on my right, Dana Hawkinson, the Medical Director of Infection Prevention and Control. We are delighted to give you an update today about the clinical trial underway for our COVID vaccine. And with us are two really important guests. One is Dr. Mario Castro, the Vice Chair for Clinical and Translational Research here at KU, and co-principal investigator, along with Dr. Barbara Pahud, Director of Infectious Disease Research at Children's Mercy. Welcome. And did I say your last name right?
Nobody can pronounce my last name. It's okay. It's French.
Okay, well, let me hear you say it.
Barbara.
All right, I'll do that. But let me hear you say your last name.
Pahud.
Okay, you're right. I'm going to say Barbara.
Bonjour, bonjour.
All right, lots to talk about, but first, Hawkeye, what are the numbers like today?
Yeah, they're better. You know, we were really concerned.
We're a little worried yesterday.
We were concerned because it was a large jump from 29 to 39. We are down today to 30, which is really good.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Yeah, so we've had discharges, but we've also had a few admissions as well.
Yeah.
But of those, a third of those, 10 of those are in the ICU, and 7 of those are on the vent still. So.
Okay. Well, 30 is better than 39.
It's a lot better.
Yeah, it's a lot better than 39. So let's turn first to Dr. Castro. Talk to us again about the trial, and we have people who are signing up, and how.
Sure.
And you two are the co-PIs for this area, right? I mean, or PI, co-PI, something like that. You guys, it's all about what you're doing here. So talk to us about this vaccine trial, because that's really a big deal.
Thanks, Steve. Well, first, reaching out to my colleague, Barb, that really helped us make this possible here at KU through the Vaccine Center, which he leads there at Children's Mercy. Kind of reached out to us because this is an adult vaccine study and said, Mario, could you join forces with us? And I think we've been an awesome force together in terms of working to get this happening here. And we believe that Kansas City, KU, is really going to lead the country in terms of really trying to push this forward and get a solution for us. So we're part of a network called CoVPN, and CoVPN is based in Fred Hutchinson Center in Seattle, and they're organizing 5 different vaccine studies. And so in the vaccine studies we're going to do here is the one that originated at Oxford University. And then that vaccine, which was developed, was subsequently bought out by Astrazeneca, and this is now called the Astrazeneca COVID-19 vaccine study. And this vaccine, and I'll let Dr. Pahud talk a little bit more about the intricacies of how the vaccine was made, but really looks promising. The early data that was published now 2 weeks ago.
It feels like it's been 2 years.
Like
yes,
we're going to give that to you.
It's a time warp. It seems like it's been that long. But 2 weeks ago, they published this pivotal study in Lancet, which said in 1,000 individuals, healthy individuals, 18 to 55 years of age, that the vaccine was efficacious in terms of increasing serology, protective antibodies to it. We also learned that giving a second vaccine 28 days later boosted immunity about 3-fold, and that this was equivalent to giving convalescent plasma for somebody that recovered from COVID-19 infection. And then the last thing we learned from this study was that the side effects were what we expected. From when Dr. Stites gets his influenza vaccine, you know, he's going to feel a little achy in the muscle, may having some low-grade fevers, headaches, myalgias, but that's kind of what we expect. But that's what we expect, and I think this is, you know, what we understand from this pivotal study is really what formulated the protocol, and now we have to do it in 30,000 individuals in the U.S., and we have to do it very carefully. We have to do it right in order to understand exactly how this vaccine is going to work and whether or not it's safe for our public health. And in the study, for every 3 people that are entering to the study, 2 will get the active vaccine, 1 will get placebo. And I think that's a very important message, you know, to go out to our community, is that this is still investigative. And in order to contribute to the public knowledge, volunteers that participate in this study have to realize that they could get placebo, 1 out of 3 chance that they will get a placebo vaccine. And so I think it's going to be very exciting. We aim to enroll 1,250 individuals here at KU Medical Center across 5 different locations. We're going to have our 2 locations here on Rainbow Campus, on the Fairway Campus off of Shawnee Mission Parkway, and then we're going to have the KU Wichita campus enroll as well. And we're promised 2 vans, but right now we only have 1 on the docket by the end of this month. Mobile vans, mobile clinics that we're going to be able to travel around the Kansas City metropolitan area to really hit those at-risk populations that we want to enroll, the elderly population, the minority populations, including both African Americans and Hispanics, that are at high risk of this infection.
Yeah, so important. Dr. Pahud, not bad, not bad.
Not bad.
All right, so I think Mario was kind of giving you a lead in there for talking a little bit more about how the vaccine works. And with that, talk to us about why you think it'll be safe.
When we were asked to be part of this, given a choice of which vaccine we could pick to test, and I selected the Astrazeneca vaccine because I really like the way that it's made. So I'll try to explain this in brief. What we are doing is using an adenovirus, which is a virus that causes a common cold. And this virus, basically, imagine it as an Amazon box, and it's full of all the stuff that you ordered, and there's a box outside. So the stuff inside of the box is what causes disease. It's what attacks you and what makes you get sick. What we're using is only the box, the adenovirus capsule only, to deliver what we want you to develop an immunity against. So the adenovirus that we're using is actually not human, it's chimpanzee, and we did that on purpose. The reason is a lot of people that have used adenoviral vectors that are human in previous vaccines have not worked because we humans have seen that adenovirus. And so the moment we get injected with it, you attack it and you don't develop immunity for it. So this technology developed in Oxford is very smart. It's still an adenovirus that our body can recognize, but it's a chimpanzee adenovirus that we have never seen before, so we can develop immunity against it. And that is going to deliver the spike of the coronavirus that you all have seen in those pictures. There's a virus like this, and it has little spikes. The tiny spike on the outside is going to be inside of the adenovirus vector, and that's what we're trying to create immunity against. Now, the spike has 3 components. The most important component is the one that attaches to a receptor in our nose, the ACE inhibitor receptor. That's the component we want to create immunity against, because if your body attacks that piece of the coronavirus, your body will not even allow the virus to come in because antibodies will attach to that piece of the coronavirus, which is the entry point. And if it can't even open the door to your body, then you can't get infected. So it is actually a very smart mechanism. We've done vaccines like this before, and it's a very safe way to deliver immunity.
Do I have to be worried that I'm going to act more like a chimp than my wife may think that I already do?
Hopefully not.
Is there any dangers then from an adenovirus that's really found in chimpanzees and giving it to humans?
No, actually, we've had a lot of clinical trials done with this type of technology with other vaccines, Zika virus, tuberculosis. It's been used actually frequently in treatment of cancer because these type of vaccines have been used not just for infectious diseases, but for treatment of prostate cancer and other things like that. So we have a lot of safety experience with this vaccine compared to others that are a little bit more new. And so I liked it because I tend to pick vaccines that we're going to use, at least at Children's Mercy when we've done clinical trials in the past, that I would give to my child or that I would take myself. So this is a vaccine that I very much like. And one more piece of information, if you don't mind me sharing this, is in India, one of the largest vaccine institutes, it's owned by a set of Indian millionaires, and they produce the vast majority of vaccines that are distributed among the developing world. These people have acquired the AstraZeneca vaccine and already started producing it so that when it gets approval, they will already have billions of doses ready to distribute to the developing world. So basically, they are betting that this is a vaccine that's going to work because this is a vaccine that they're already manufacturing now before we even finish the phase 3 trials.
Well, I think that's encouraging. I'm guessing they wouldn't do that without some degree of confidence. And Dana, we need a vaccine.
Yeah, absolutely. We do. You know, this is very good. This has been going at warp speed, so a lot quicker than any other vaccine has been able to be tested and hopefully come to market. And again, the important things in these trials, and since day one, has always been safety as well as efficacy, and so they are working on those things as well.
Yeah, and watch a little Star Trek Sunday night, so I'm all about that warp speed. New season for Discovery starts October 15th. I'm ready to go. All right, Jill, do we have questions from media?
I have a question. We are working on a story with an individual who had tested positive for COVID, completed their 2-week quarantine a few weeks ago, and during that was prescribed an inhaler. They'd never needed one before in their life. They don't have underlying conditions, and they are still occasionally needing that inhaler. Kind of that tightness seems to be a lingering side effect, even though they've recovered. Are you seeing that? They didn't need to be hospitalized, but a lingering side effect like that.
Well, you know, we have an asthma specialist right here who I was thinking is going to say, not a surprise, Mario.
That's right, Steve. Great question. And one of the things that we have learned over the 6 months of this infection is that there are prolonged side effects, prolonged manifestations of this lower respiratory tract infection in your lungs, your brain, your kidneys, your heart. And we now know that in the lungs that this virus causes a lower respiratory tract infection in the very small bronchioles, what we call the bronchioles, and that this can cause persistent symptoms way out. We've seen this before with other viruses, like influenza is one of the classic ones. And we'll find that some of our patients are have these lingering symptoms for weeks. And so the use of an inhaler would be appropriate to help open up those airways and to help that patient with those symptoms. But I would recommend, of course, that it be under medical care and that there be evaluation, perhaps with pulmonary function test, to kind of see where they're at in terms of the severity of their lung function, and that there be adjustment of their therapy based on that.
All right, so yeah, not such a big surprise, unfortunately. We're probably going to see more of that as time goes on. And, you know, this is what sometimes gives us a little bit of nervousness. We don't know what we don't know in COVID. And that's a tease for tomorrow, because we're going to be addressing some of the concerns that are arising in the sports medicine world about whether or not it is really safe to resume sports. And so our sports medicine cardiologist, our sports medicine neurologist, and the godfather of sports medicine here are all going to be on the program with us to address the rising concern and the cancellation of football seasons in the Pac-10 and out in the and whatever the other department. And I think Big Ten.
It's also maybe one good thing to admit, like one of the earliest studies from China came out and said, even if you don't have symptoms, we know that you can have changes on your lungs based on CT scan. So if you are having symptoms, you probably have those changes as well. So that goes along just with Dr. Castro.
Yeah, it's really not a surprise at all. So, other questions out from media.
I've read an account the other day about, or a report the other day talking about the efficacy of a vaccine when it comes to people who are obese. And I had never heard any kind of situation where vaccines, and the report kind of indicates that this is the case, but I'd never heard that there was less of a chance of a vaccine, any vaccine, even the flu vaccine, working as well for someone who may be overweight. And I was curious about, because the story is about, or the article was about, how there are some concerns that any COVID-19 vaccine will not work as well for a patient who's obese. And I was just seeing if you guys would address that and just talk about how efficient sometimes the vaccines are for people who are struggling with obesity.
Barbara, do you want to start with that conversation?
Yes, absolutely. So when we do phase 3 clinical trials, this is why it's so important for us to recruit from a very wide, diverse group of people, including different ethnicities, different body types, because that's how we can find out if there is truly a problem with a vaccine. So if, let's say, we enroll here in Kansas City 1,250 people, and of those 200 happen to be obese, and we notice that they get infected at higher rates than their counterparts, then we would then be able to adjust the data, maybe give them a boost dose, or figure out if we need to increase the doses. We know that, for example, with the elderly, as you know, anybody that requires higher dose vaccine, like the high dose flu vaccine, we know that they need a higher dose because they have an immune system that is basically aging and does not respond as well, or people that have immune deficiencies also need sometimes higher doses of vaccine. I have not seen any data that any vaccine that we currently use needs to be dosed at a higher level for obese patients. We do know, however, and this may be where the confusion is, that some obese patients may have more severe disease, like it happened in the H1N1 pandemic, and they were one of the priority groups to get the vaccine first. So we're pregnant women, so we're children. So every time we have a pandemic, we pay close attention to who's high risk. So when the vaccine is available, we can immunize them first. But at the moment, I don't know of any concern about obesity being a factor for not responding to the vaccine, but we would be able to analyze that after the phase 3 data.
Mario, anything else?
I agree. Unless they're immunosuppressed or have some other coexistent condition that would put them at risk, obesity does not seem to affect the response to the vaccine. We looked at this in a large study we did with the influenza vaccine and in over 2,000 individuals, and showed that obesity did not impact that. But if patients were taking steroids, it did impact their immunity to the flu vaccine.
So it's the other things that go along sometimes with obesity that can make can be a problem. Okay.
Exactly.
Other questions from media? Jill, you're up.
Oh my gosh, we're going to have to roll through these. People have 1,000 questions.
Lots of vaccine questions.
Yeah, lots. Okay, we're going to start with a question that was asked and has been in our queue for a long time, and I promised I would get this out here. Several people are asking, you follow me for 2 years if I volunteer for this trial, I get the placebo. If and when a vaccine comes out, am I able to still get vaccinated?
Sure. And it's important to know in all clinical studies, you are a volunteer. And so you are free to do what you feel is best for you, and we ethically always consider that in conduct of a clinical trial. What is your right? What is your responsibility? But what's also your personal rights? And so in this study, we plan to once the FDA reviews the information from this vaccine, and if the FDA approves this vaccine, the sponsor has agreed to provide the vaccine to everybody that received placebo, which is great because access to vaccines is going to be a problem. And there is, how many 300 some million here in the U.S.
350, yeah.
And so getting a vaccine to everybody in the U.S. is going to be a problem. There's a distribution problem. And so being part of the study, if you do get that placebo, out of chance, then you could come back once that vaccine is approved for receiving the vaccine for free. So it's a good question, though, often one that comes up.
Oh, good. So I can cut to the head of the line.
Yeah, there you go.
Or toward the front, right?
There you're hoping.
Okay. Simone wants to know what you think about Russia skipping phase 3 with their trial, and why don't you guys just do that?
Let's touch base. Barbara, what do you think about skipping phase 3, and should the United States do that? No.
I was just talking to Mario about that this morning. So in the United States, we have almost never done that. In the H1N1 pandemic, which we were involved with as well at Children's Mercy doing the pediatric clinical trials, we can come up with a vaccine faster. And then if we have enough data to show that it's efficacious, we can release it to the public through something that's called emergency use authorization. And that means we know that there's a pandemic, we know that the public needs it, so we're going to kind of allow you to have access to this vaccine, but we're kind of warning you we don't have all the data that we need to have that vaccine be FDA approved. Another example of when we did this is, if you remember when we had the meningococcal outbreaks in colleges with the serotype V, we had a vaccine that was in production, that was being studied, but we didn't have all the data yet to have it be FDA approved. And the government released it to college students to be allowed to be used under the emergency use authorization. So when we do that, we have special measures in place, and we do what we call phase 4 studies, where we can pay very close attention to how these people that are getting the vaccine do once the vaccine is released to them without it being FDA approved. So if we do it in the United States, it's going to be only under emergency use authorization.
Do you see that coming, Mario?
I don't think so. I think the likelihood of that, if it's released, it's going to be a small number of people that are truly at risk. I do think that there are so many vaccines that are going to be out there, and we have to know in carefully done studies what is efficacious and what is safe. When you skip phase 3, you're really skipping that safety part. And I think that's absolutely wrong to do. And I'd be interested to see, Dana, what you think. But there is a reason why we move carefully through these trials. And even at a warp speed, we have to go through those steps because we need to know this is safe for the public health.
Yeah, you don't want to crash your starship. Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there is already a large contingent of people, or a very vocal contingent of people, who don't like vaccines anyways, even though they are proven safe and efficacious and have stopped hundreds of millions of children and adults from having illness and death. So I think the safety is a good point. And to your point, too, there are many vaccines out there. There may be 2 or 3 major vaccines that we're going to have to be using for this. There may be 2 or 3 iterations or generations coming down in the next few years about this as we learn more and more about this. A lot of that vaccines, as Dr. Pahud had talked about, do work with the spike protein, so they're very conserved regions on the spike protein, so that should help as well. But I think this is the very first baby step in larger steps to go in the next few years as well.
So I hear Barbara saying, gosh, you can do an EUA, and then I also hear the safety concerns. How do we reconcile those 2 points? And if we've done it before, should we not do it now? Just tell me with that, Barbara.
Clarify. When we do an emergency use authorization, it's always after we have phase 3 data. We never do this prior to phase 3 data. It's when we have enough data from those studies to say the vaccine seems to work, we seem to have enough safety data to release it. But as an example with our study, it's a 2-year study. We won't have all the data that we need until 2 years out. We can't wait 2 years to release that vaccine to the public. So if, let's say, by January, we have enough data that shows that the vaccine worked and that it's safe, then we can release it under an emergency use authorization, because we've done this in the past with other vaccines. We did it with H1N1. We've done it with drugs. The drugs that we've been using to treat patients for coronavirus have been released under emergency use authorization, because you can't wait for the 2-year study to show that the drug is 100% effective and safe. So you do it with very close supervision, but never before you have preliminary data from a phase 3 study.
Got it. So and I think that helps clarify it, because you're getting enough information. And what Russia's doing is they're skipping that step, right?
Yep.
They're just going right to it. Oh, we think it's going to work. Let's give it to everybody.
Yeah, no, I think we as physicians have to establish that public health trust, right?
We do.
And so if we skip a critical step and we make a mistake along the way, Steve, I think that's going to be what we're going to break that trust.
Yes.
Right. And as Dr. Pahud and I have been really working hard, is to work with our community to hit this problem right where it's very critical, which is with our minority populations and with our elderly population. We want to be doing this right. And so we were talking this morning of, we need to establish a vaccine confidence, right? We need to establish that we're going to do this right, and there is confidence around this vaccine, as opposed to, as Hawkeye mentioned, this vaccine kind of scare.
Yeah.
It is going to be something that we're going to make available to the public, maybe in a limited, emergency use authorization before we have that full data. But ultimately, it's going to go through all those steps here in the U.S.
Yeah.
So if I get one of a different vaccine, and then the data starts coming in that the one that you guys are working on is better, can I get a second vaccine and get this one as well?
Yeah, so that's going to be difficult.
Two better than one, Mario.
So so I'll talk about from our study perspective, and then ask Dr. Pahud to address it from other vaccine perspectives. But the study itself, we're asking people not to go out of the study and get another investigational vaccine, because what that will do then is destroy the data for both studies.
Yeah.
And so we ask our volunteers to really, commit to this study and to the vaccine study, and not go enroll in other studies. But I'll ask Dr. Pahud maybe to address the question about 2 vaccines for coronavirus.
So I think we've had problems like this in the past with influenza as well, right? There's multiple brands of influenza vaccines, multiple doses. We had the same problem with the rotavirus vaccine. And what happens is these is where the phase 4 studies come in. As a phase 4, we, for example, at Children's Mercy did a study where we compared a mix and match dosage plan for the rotavirus vaccine. And then we can determine if it's possible to get 2 different vaccines and if they're just as immunogenic or if they interfere with each other. So for example, with rotavirus, you can mix and match as long as you get a certain number of doses, versus, for example, with a meningococcal V vaccine, you cannot mix and match. If you start with one product, you need to finish with that product. Now, in this setting of this pandemic, if you come into our trial, for example, and we find out that another vaccine gets approval faster than ours, of course, you would be allowed to take it, but we would need to adjust how we analyze the data in our study to account for that. But you would still be allowed to do it because, as Dr. Castro said, our number 1 priority is safety and making sure that our participants get the best care that they need. But if you were in a study and you want to take part of another study, that's where we would prefer you don't do that, because you're still just investigating 2 products, and we would rather keep the data clean to be able to get these vaccines out to the public fast.
Yeah, makes great sense.
Okay, several people, I'm not even going to say their names because there's so many of them, want to know, can you walk me through this? I've volunteered, I haven't heard from anybody. When's it going to start? How are you going to contact me? How
Everybody
am I
wants
to
to
be
know
screened?
already, and how do you sign up? And let's get it done.
Yeah, let's
okay,
go.
who's going to take on the walking?
And hopefully we can distribute the number as contact information, but
We do, we've got it.
Okay,
You
our
just call
recruitment
through.
coordinator is Shelby Almo, and it's salmo@kumc.org. No,
No, EDU.
edu.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. And so reach out to Shelby to get your name on a list. We anticipate that the vaccine will be shipped to us later in the next week or 2, but we don't have a definite launch date yet from the sponsor. So we anticipate it's going to be in the next week or 2, but maybe later here in August. And so the best we can do at this point, we do have IRB approval, so we can capture those names. We can go ahead and make some plans for that. You can also go online and register. So there is a coronavirus prevention network, all those words, lowercase, all one word, no dots or anything, coronaviruspreventionnetwork.org. You can go on that registry. If you go into that registry and go ahead and register for the vaccine study, keep in mind you need to put in KUMC, because that KUMC will then let us know that you as a participant want to volunteer here for this particular vaccine study.
Barbara, any other thoughts? And how is Children's going about making sure people get registered and kids get registered?
Well, so I'm so glad that you brought that up. There is no study right now involving children, and not only in Kansas City, in the entire United States. There's absolutely no data for children at the moment. During the H1N1 pandemic, we were doing the adult studies, pregnant, children, elderly at the same time. With this pandemic, because children seem to be affected less than adults, the priority has been to launch the studies for adults only, but there isn't a single protocol at the moment for children. So the enrollment criteria is 18 years and above. And what would happen is we call you or you volunteer, one of our coordinators gets in touch with you, and then you need to meet what we call inclusion and exclusion criteria. An inclusion criteria might be you must be over the age of 18. An exclusion criteria might be you're taking a medication that makes your immune system not work, so you're immunosuppressed. And if your immune system doesn't work, you're not going to be able to develop immunity against this vaccine, and that's not what we want in a study. So after you fit these criteria, the inclusion and exclusion criteria, if you meet them all, you're going to be able to be enrolled into the study. Once you're enrolled, we would bring you to one of the places where we're administering the vaccine. We would draw some blood, we would give you the vaccine, and then you would come back a month later, get a second dose of the vaccine, and then you have 4 more visits for blood draw during the first year and 1 more visit the last year. So in total, you're going to have 7 visits, 2 vaccine visits, 5 blood draws plus the 2 vaccine visits. And throughout that entire time that you're in the study for 2 years, anytime you have symptoms that look like feel like maybe corona, we want to see you. So we would bring you back, we would swab you and also get some blood to make sure that we can monitor whether you have the disease or not, because that's how we ultimately find out if the vaccine works, by comparing the rate of people that get the disease among those that were vaccinated compared to those that didn't get the vaccine.
All right, great description.
Yeah, and interesting, during that observation period, anybody that gets COVID-19 infection are actually going to have a health monitor that's going to give you information about your oxygen level, your heart rate, your temperature. So you're actually going to have even better kind of at-home observation than you would if you did not participate in the study.
And if I come in and get swabbed, are you all going to be able to tell me if I have it, or do I have to go to a regular doctor and get swabbed again?
So our plan is at each of the sites have to be co-located with a site that can run the testing within 24 hours. So of course here at KUMC, we're going to do the testing at our two enrollment sites, and we're going to run it through our lab here and provide those results within 24 hours. It's critical for, of course, patients to know for quarantine purposes, but also for the study purposes, because then we're going to implement this very careful monitoring strategy as part of the study.
Okay. Yeah.
Brandon wants to know, what's the biggest side effect you've had in the first 2 phases of the trial?
Biggest side effect? Yeah. My arm hurts.
Yeah. Or
Barb?
fever.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm so glad you said that. That's exactly it. It's the usual side effects that we expect from a vaccine. It hurts, my arm is a little bit sore, it's a little bit red. But other than that, we've seen nothing that's concerning. The other side effect that we also see with like the influenza vaccine is some maybe chills or muscle aches. And the way that I like to explain this to my patients is, if you go and run a 5K after you haven't run in a while, you're going to have this fury of cytokines going through your body that make you feel a little bit achy, and you just don't feel like that great. But it's not anything that stops you from going to work or doing your normal activities. You're just feeling a little achy. That's the feeling you will get after you get this vaccine, which is usually a good feeling, because that means your immune system is attacking that piece of the spike that we want it to attack. It's creating an immune response against it. And imagine if that's how you feel when you see this piece of a virus, how would you feel if you see the whole virus? So I prefer that you have that little soreness on your arm and a little muscle aches and maybe chills than getting the disease. So it's definitely worth it. In my opinion, it's very safe.
And another reassuring thing from the preliminary study that was published in Lancet, there was no serious adverse events in over 1,000 individuals. Now, we got to do the 30,000 patient study, participant study, but that was reassuring to me that we did not see somebody, have a significant reaction to the vaccine.
And you all feel pretty confident, I think, about this. And I mean, not in a bad way. I don't mean that badly at all. But contrast this with I'm going to say this probably incorrectly, the Moderna vaccine. How is the one coming with the one that you guys are studying different from the Moderna vaccine?
How are you hopeful?
Well, I'm just asking what's the difference between the two. My question is exactly that. How is it different than the Moderna
Maybe I'll throw that
vaccine?
to Dr. Pahud.
Happy to take that on. So we had the choice of picking the Moderna vaccine or the Astrazeneca. I chose the Astrazeneca because at first it appeared to be a one-dose vaccine, and then as we had more data, as Mario explained later, the second dose of the Astrazeneca vaccine brings your immunity up to levels that are equal to those that actually had the disease. So that is fantastic news. Number two, we had data from the Astrazeneca vaccine trials where they exposed animals that were vaccinated with the Astrazeneca vaccine. They were basically inundated with virus. They gave them to them through their lungs, their nose. They exposed them, like they showered them with a virus. And in spite of that very extreme exposure to corona, none of these animals contracted the disease. What our vaccine does, though, is you can still find it in the nose, so it does not eliminate carriage, but it does eliminate disease, which is exactly what we want to see right now. The Moderna vaccine is newer technology from a vaccine point of view. There's a lot of new technologies that are being used now to create coronavirus vaccines because they increase speed. We can produce the vaccine faster than other vaccines that take longer, like the influenza vaccines that are made in eggs. And I think I am still observing the data and trying to find out what the long-term side effects of these vaccines will be. I am pretty certain it's going to be safe, but because I don't have experience with any messenger RNA vaccine In the past, we've never had a vaccine that's been done that way. I decided to pick the Astrazeneca because I feel very comfortable with the technology that's being used with the Astrazeneca vaccine.
So it's a different type, it's a different style of vaccine, and the key will be in those phase 3 studies and looking to make sure that it's safe as well. So hopefully we have lots of good choices here at the end.
Yeah, and I was also concerned, at least with the Moderna vaccine, there were relatively small phase 1 studies that were released, and so the wealth of data that we talked about in over 1,000 individuals, we have the AZ, that gives me even more confidence to move on to the next stage.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Debbie wants to know why 1 person out of 3 gets the placebo.
Great question. So, as I mentioned in the very beginning, we have to do this right. And the importance of the placebo injection is that anytime anybody gets anything done to them, they feel like something happens, right? So we did a very large study with the influenza vaccine in asthma patients because we were being told by my asthma patients, I don't want to get the flu shot because it makes my asthma worse. And I said, I don't understand. I don't think that's true, but let's study it. So we studied that in over 2,000 individuals, and we found that 30% of the placebo injection participants got side effects, and exactly 30% of those that got the influenza vaccine had side effects. So just getting that injection makes you have symptoms, even if you're getting placebo. And so we need to know, are those percentages different? Are those side effects different from placebo? We need to know, so that helps us for safety, but also helps us interpret efficacy. As you can imagine, people that get the placebo, it's not like you're walking around in a bubble. You're going to be exposed to this virus in the community. And so there may be some background immunity, even if you get placebo, that develops. And so we're going to be able to compare the immune response to the active vaccine to the placebo. And without that placebo, the study would be flawed, potentially.
Okay. I think we probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I know there's a lot.
Well, there are. It's hard for me to choose. I'll go with the last one, the one that just came in. Brandon's asking, are physicians going to be allowed to participate, and will you?
All right. Barbara, can we let docs do that? Be in this?
Oh my God, absolutely. So if they are at risk, they're absolutely able to participate. I know Mario knows this. I wanted to be the first one to get the vaccine. I love to be, when I do studies, the very first one so I can monitor the whole process. And unfortunately, in this study, one of the exclusion criteria is that if you are part of the study staff, you can't participate. And so I'm not going to be able to, but if I was able to, if I was not part of the study, I would. And the other thing I can tell you is all my colleagues at Children's Mercy and Infectious Diseases have already volunteered to be part of the study because they are not part of the staff, since I'm doing it in collaboration with you guys here in KU Med. So they are going to be the first ones to get the vaccine. And my daughter even said, why it's not fair that children are not allowed to get it. She wanted to be the first one to get it as well.
I would agree. Dan, I'm ready to go. Are you a staff in the study? I'm not a staff in the study. Are you?
I'm not a staff in the study.
Would you sign
up? And I know
up?
plenty of people here who are doing
Would
it
you
as well.
sign up?
I'm debating it right now.
So tell me why are you hesitating?
Yeah. Well, I think that the safety is there. There are other studies, although we aren't part of that. I just haven't had the time to go in
to look at it
and do that yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I trust these guys, and here's my deal. I like old technology, so I'm ready to go. Sure. Even if I love about Star Trek and warp speed and things like that, it is reassuring to me that it's something we've done before in terms of the vector and things of that nature. And besides, I can eat. I like bananas already. It's like a little chimpanzee, but who cares?
Well, no, I think it brings up a good point about healthcare workers. We want to enroll healthcare workers. We know that healthcare workers are at risk, and so we're definitely going to enroll docs. We're going to enroll people that are, changing the rooms, people that are exposed to the virus. Anybody that is really working as a healthcare worker that's being exposed to COVID patients, I think, should think about participating in the study.
So, Mara, I still do a little bit of pulmonary, so can I still be called a healthcare worker? Are you going to exclude me on that
We'll let
basis?
you in, Dr. Stites.
All right, one more question.
Okay, they're asking if they like work from home and they're not out in the community, are they going to be considered a candidate
Great
for
question,
this?
huh? Mario, what do you think?
So one of the inclusion criteria, as Dr. Pahud mentioned, is being at risk for the COVID infection. So if you're truly in quarantine and in your own home, we would not consider that an appropriate candidate for the study. We want to enroll those that are truly having to work out in the community, having to be exposed to the virus, frontline workers. We want those participants that are being exposed to have access to this vaccine. Eventually, we'll find out the answer for that individual, but at this point, we would exclude that individual.
All right, we wrap up this morning. Barbara, Pahud, not bad. Tell me a little bit about what makes you have hope here.
I am very hopeful at how quickly we've been able to pull our resources together. The NIH selected sites that have done this type of work, vaccine research, for a very long time. That's how they tapped into Children's Mercy. And they are moving at very fast speed, which I know has worried some people. What I want to say over and over again is we are moving fast because we know how to do this. We did it during the 2009 pandemic. We had a vaccine within 6 months, and we were able to distribute it to the people even still in 2009. So what we're doing right now may feel fast to people who don't live in our world, but this is what we do. We've been trained to do this. We know how to do this. We have the staff that has the experience to do clinical trials and vaccines. And with this partnership that we have with KU, it's going to be even a better study. I mean, you have a vaccinologist, myself, partnered with a critical care pulmonologist here at KU. I mean, I can't imagine a better team anywhere to be able to oversee a study like this. So I hope people understand that even though this process is moving fast, it doesn't mean that we're compromising safety in any.
Well, and thank you, and thanks for that, and thanks for obviously helping KU be a part of this, and just so appreciate the relationship and the partnership between Children's and KU, which continues to grow and prosper. Mario, final thoughts.
Well, you know, I think we all been used to wearing these things, and I hate them. And I'm sure, you know, as people that wear glasses and everything else, that we have had to alter our life.
Yeah.
And this gives me hope that we can perhaps get back to that stage where we can start interacting in public. We can start, you know, having some normalcy in our life. If this vaccine works, and it does protect us against the virus, as Dr. Pahud mentioned, this is really going to allow us to resume back to normal activity.
Yeah, that'll be the best thing.
Yeah.
Dana?
Absolutely. We all hate the masks. We don't want to be doing it, but we have to right now. The vaccine, as Barbara stated, a lot of this is not new technology. It's been around since the SARS vaccine that they were working on, the Ebola vaccine, so they are safe. And hopefully, as we continue to move forward at very rapid pace with continued evaluation of safety and efficacy, we will have something in the near future and be able to keep people safe, and then eventually, obviously, children and other at-risk immunocompromised groups as well.
Yeah, it is so important. You know, tomorrow we're going to have an honest and forthright conversation around, is it safe to go back to sports? So we'll be joined by Dr. Tim Beaver, who is our sports medicine cardiologist, and our sports medicine neurologist, Dr. Michael Rippey, and the head of orthopedics and the man who really helped develop sports medicine here at KU, Bruce Tobey. That'll be a fascinating conversation. But you know, today's program's got a little different flair to it, a little different flavor, and just a little story. So when I started doing pulmonary critical care medicine, I did it in cystic fibrosis, and actually trained in part with a gentleman from Barnes,
Yes.
Dan Rosenbluth, and he and I were sitting at the cystic fibrosis meeting. There were probably all about 10 adult doctors at that point, because cystic fibrosis was a pediatric disease, and most people did not do very well with it, and they died at a young age. And what happened was, we were sitting in the meeting, he turned to me and he said, you know, this meeting is at about 50% science and 50% pep rally. I think the pep rally is more important. And sometimes I think that's true. In medicine, what we have to offer our patients isn't always the best, and sometimes what you have to offer is hope. And today's session is about hope, a way out of this darn pandemic through the vaccination and the development and the use of science to help find new ways to keep people healthy and to help us get rid of masks.
Yep.
So that is a great development. We thank you both for being here and helping us find hope in the midst of a pandemic. Hey, a couple of mask pictures. Jay is getting ready for a fishing trip. I love that fly rod. That is the best. It looks like maybe your wife or someone, your significant other, is there with you. My wife goes fly fishing with me. That's the best. Amy is proud of her grown daughters at home for a visit and setting a good example by wearing the masks. And Mariah writes, practicing masking on short trips and working on mask endurance, trying to get the newly 4-year-old to have a mask. She prefers her hat. Hey, remember to sign up or take a look for that coronavirus trial, because that vaccine trial is incredibly important. Mario, what's that website again?
It's coronaviruspreventionnetwork.org.
All right. I'll be signing up. Hope you do too. In the meantime, remember how to stay safe. Wear your mask, keep your distance, cough into your elbow, wash your hands. There's still no place like home. And hope is on our horizon. We'll see you tomorrow.